Right now, I'm going to show you how to nature journal from a kayak. Tip number 1, go somewhere with water. In addition to having water, you want a location that is close, convenient, calm, and comfortable. Closer to your house so it's easy to get to, convenient for putting the kayak into the water, calm as in not too many waves or currents, and comfortable as in how easy and safe you feel when you're there. Tip number 2, practice kayaking and nature journaling separately before you try doing them at the same time. Even just strapping your kayak onto your car is going to take a lot of practice. Tip number 3, keep your supplies simple. Look how long it took me to unload my truck and pack my kayak. The more art supplies you have with you and the more fancy those art supplies are, the more likely you are to not journal at all or to drop something into the water. Tip number 5, be safe. One crucial thing to plan for is the sun. So you're definitely gonna wanna wear a hat. I like these sun gloves so I don't get the sunscreen on my hands and then onto my paper. Using sunglasses is probably a good idea, especially when the sun is hitting your paper. You're gonna get a lot of eye strain. I find that sunglasses and a hat allow me to nature journal a lot longer because I don't get a headache, I don't get eye strain. Sunscreen, obviously, long layers, covering up with clothing, and then also, if you can, especially like now during the winter, you can position yourself in a place where there's shade. Usually when you're kayaking, that's not an option. That's often not an option because you're in a really open area. But if you're in a spot where there's trees and it's in the winter and the sun's lower, you can find a spot where there's shade. One thing that's definitely different about nature journaling from a kayak is that you're almost constantly moving. So that means that whatever you're trying to draw, whatever you're trying to look at is going to be moving in relative to where you're at. And even if you're on pretty still water, there's going to be a lot of drift. And if you're in the ocean or in a river, there's going to be even more drift. So I don't have an anchor, but one thing that is possible is to just do quicker drawings, which is what I did in the bay the other day with JP. So if you have a small sketchbook and you can kind of use one hand to paddle a little bit to adjust your angle, that will help a lot. Here are some quick sketches that I did of the osprey. And I'm definitely getting a little bit seasick and trying to manage that. So I think doing quick sketches in a small book is definitely going to be the way to go, and having an expectation that you're going to do some really like in-depth drawings is probably going to be hard. You're not going to get your subject at the same angle for very long. So one technique you can use is to drift. Intentionally figure out what the drift angle is. So like JP's over there and she's drifting towards me and she's facing the birds over there. So there's the osprey and there are the pelicans. So what you can do is repeatedly set yourself up for that. So I just done 2 passes on that osprey. I could paddle back around JP, set myself up over there and drift by it again, and just use a little bit of adjustments with my paddles occasionally to keep myself facing the right direction, and while I drift by my subject, do these repeated sketches of it. But another thing that you can do in freshwater is sometimes you can find vegetation such as this right here and kind of stick yourself into it and park in it. You can also do this in like estuaries where there's mud or things like that, or you could nature journal with in a 2-person kayak, and one person can kind of be in charge of navigation. You can also sometimes in places where it's shallow enough, you can just stick a pole in, but right now I'm not drifting because of this vegetation. Bring a lunch, because if you have food with you, you can stay out so much longer, and even just while you're sitting there, eating your food, you might notice things, and it just means you'll be able to spend more time out on the water. Having some type of simple, closable, safe way to store food. I like these metal ones because I don't have to worry about putting hot food into plastic. It's a great simple little thing. This one's not watertight. A watertight one could be good. Bringing out, you know, like a canteen of soup or something like that. Something easy, simple, but so that you can sustain yourself. I definitely brought snacks and like protein bars, but you can only go so long with tangerines and protein bars. Nature journaling on kayak doesn't mean you need to be on the kayak the whole time. You can access places that you can't normally. So every once in a while, you know, you can pull over to the side and get to places and get out and nature journal from the shore. I really want to try doing a landscapeito and proper watercolor in my nature journal while I'm out here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to look for a view that I like. I don't want to look that way. I mean, look at how artificial that looks, the way those trees are planted over there. But I would like to get some redwoods in the background because I think that's characteristic of this place. And I love those dead redwoods often look really, really cool. And that also provides some major vertical stuff going on, and then there's cool horizontal stuff going on here a lot of times with this vegetation, this water plant. I don't know exactly what it is, so if I can find a perspective that shows that, would be really cool. I'm also looking for a spot where I can park my boat, and I think I would actually be able to get a cooler perspective from out there in the water and get a better view. If I were over there somewhere, I could get a better view of that vegetation in my landscapeito. But being able to park so that I'm not moving is gonna be crucial if I'm gonna actually complete this painting in the field. All right, I changed my mind. I wanna be a little bit more in the sun. Always bring more layers than you think you need in the parking lot. A lot of times it's warmer in the parking lot than out on the water, so I wish I had brought this one layer that I put in the car at the last minute. So I'm kind of stuck here in these plants, but that's actually good. That means I won't drift. Up here it looks like there's a good view. In my landscape. We got some landscapeito options for sure up here. This is beautiful. Oh, yeah, come on. Nature journaling from a kayak and a bunch of invasive aquatic plants. Pretty sure these are invasive. Oh, yeah. Check this out. All right, let's do this. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do, of course, put on my bulldog clips. Love these things. Essential nature journaling tool for me right here. Essential. Okay, another essential tool for me is my viewfinder. Love this one, this new plastic one. So I'm gonna look at a couple different perspectives here and try to find something that I like the look of for a landscapeito. And I can also use this to trace in my composition, which I'll go ahead and do that. Why not? Let's see here. Shouldn't take that long to grab the tool. How do I want to crop this? There's these horizontal elements here with this water plant. See those? Really nice warm colors and really great horizontal elements, and getting those kind of overlapping or receding to the background would be really cool. And obviously I want to get, you know, some of these that skyline with the redwood trees. It's kind of solid dark. That's gonna be my darkest dark. And if that goes, you know, let's see on here, it's like thirds almost. So with the sky being the sky being less than a third and the trees being more than a third. But that's a pretty cool composition right there. Or if you could grab that edge, this edge, if you come over here, you could get just a skinnier water, which I don't know, maybe this curve right here, but the water, see, you only have those two foreground elements with invasive plant. So, you know, you can make choices that make a really big impact. So like, for example, if I want to make a really, really boring drawing, I would look over there and see, I would have a different shape than this too. I would have like a more boring rectangular shape, so like this, and then I would just center that. See, look, if I centered that right there, like this, it would look like this, but more cropped down, and you could make a really boring painting. So making good choices about your composition is the #1 way you can make a better drawing before you even start drawing. That would be good right there, but I wouldn't be able to get the trees unless I backed up this much more. Could back up that much more, but that's so much more to bite off. Yeah, gonna do the vertical. So nature journaling on a kayak is probably a good time to practice not just leaving your art supplies like lying like that on your leg, or like, you know, I took out my marker and I put it away. So I have my regular nature journal bag as internal organization inside of this dry bag, and it's not that much work to just keep things in their normal places. So more reason to have a nature journaling bag that has good pockets and to have a system of where you put your different things. That's what, and be consistent about it. That way you don't have to think. When you reach in there, you know exactly where your water brush is and which one it is. All of those things are good to make a real consistent practice with. That way you don't have to think about them. It doesn't take any mental energy when you're out in a kayak or somewhere else, or you're not like all spread all over the place. Speaking of dropping things into the water, I'm about to drop my paddle into the water. Okay, here we go with this. All right, it's watercolor, so we're starting with our lightest first, and the lightest is almost always the sky. However, blue is a really dark value color, so it's really easy to make the sky too dark, which is actually more important than getting the color right. So be careful with blue. You only need a teeny bit, or else it's going to be too dark, because everything else needs to be a lot darker. And I'm going to go ahead and paint it behind these redwoods, because these redwoods might have sky holes, and to be able to make your sky holes the same color exactly as the sky is really important. And having a little bit of that sky color on your most background element is really good, because it makes it cool and look like it's cooler temperature wise, and makes it look further away from atmospheric perspective. But in this case, my background element, those redwood trees aren't actually that far away. Now I'm noticing the light's actually changing in those redwood trees a lot since I drew it, so that's a little bit challenging, but I'm gonna keep this simple so I don't spend all day. Okay, then the next thing is my watercolor. So water is similar to sky. It's easy to mess up. It's usually not blue. Right now it's not blue, except for in places where it's reflecting the sky in just a certain way, like a mirror. But a lot of it down here is dark, which is actually a reflection of those trees back there. And if I look straight down into it, it's the color of it's the brownish and greenish colors of what's growing under the water. Okay, so I'm gonna come in and make sure I don't make it too dark. I mean, I'll start with a big light bit, and then I'll actually look to see if there's shadows of any kind. This is actually really similar to my vegetation color too, so I might just do the same thing and simplify that here. I'm gonna do that. That way I can make this whole zone all that color, and then drop out the darker colors afterwards. Oops, little bug there. Dude, it looks like a little teeny braconid wasp or something just landed on my paper right there. I'm gonna look at that in my binos. Oh yeah, dude. That thing is so little but so cool. Just looked at that with my binoculars right there. Geez, you know, these close focus binoculars are amazing. I can look at a braconid wasp on my journal. That feels like less than half a meter away, which is what they're supposed to be able to focus on. So such great binoculars. Plus, I'm not that afraid of dropping them in the water because they don't cost $1,000. Ooh, I was gonna drop in this really saturated green while it was still a little bit wet. I can still do that, but I have to remember that value. Those are my lightest values actually, so I don't want to lose the value in an attempt to get the color more accurate, because getting the value accurate is more important than getting the color accurate. So what that means is I'm gonna have to come in and make the water a darker color still. Let me put a little more saturated right here in the foreground. See, it's the foreground. Boom, look at that phthalo yellow green in the foreground. Very saturated and kind of warm for a green because it's a lot of yellow. So that's a perfect way to make the foreground pop out. Okay, now these coots are coming closer. So see, this would be a time, there's a bird coming in close here. It's doing some cool behavior. This would be a time, depending on how ADD you're feeling and how rare the event is. Like if that bird, for example, were like a snake right now, or something like that, then I would be drawing that. I would stop doing my watercolor painting. Now, this is a time to practice self-awareness, but maybe I should be just really appreciating that coot and the feeding behavior and how close it is. But in my mind, I'm thinking that is not as like rare of a thing for me to see. Like I could probably study that same time, same spot tomorrow, and I would be able to get close and see that type of behavior. So I think I'm just gonna stick with my landscapeito. But if I were also wanting to practice capturing like the entire, it depends on my intention. So if my intention here today were to do like a perfect snapshot of this place in this time, I would definitely want to get that information and the moment of it being close. But right now I want to get this landscapeito done first. Okay, I got that. Now I should drop the darkness into, actually no, I'm gonna go from light to dark like I really should. Okay, now I got this like fall yellow leaves look. That's the other warm thing in my drawing, even though the light has changed a fair amount since I started, I think. So this is gonna go over a lot of it. I'm gonna do a similar thing to down here, and just go over a large area there with the lightest version, okay? And I think I'm gonna do some wet on wet on this one, so I'm gonna take a little bit of a gray color, clean that off a little bit, and make a little bit of like a neutral gray color. I think this is like Payne's gray right here, or maybe it's BK tourmaline, not too dark. Okay, not too blue or anything weird. Oh, you know what? Oh, you know what would have been a cool color right here? It would be probably Bloodstone Genuine, but really toned down. Get a little more of that. Get a little bit darker in right away. Yeah, like that. Ooh, yeah. Don't make it too regular. When you start to, it's good if you can see these sort of simplified patterns in vegetation and trees, but once you get an idea of what that pattern is and you start reproducing it like a friggin' stamp, then that starts looking really fake. So right here, it was tempting for me to make this very regular, and that's another benefit of the wet on wet, is it forces you to create some irregularity. Humans usually like over pattern things, and doesn't look natural. So I've got my basic lights in, except for up here, and this one I'm gonna probably just go straight to the really dark, because that's how dark that background is. So I don't think I'm gonna do another wash underneath. If you remember, there's a little bit of blue underneath that already, and then once I do that one, I'll start doing the other darks like the water. Okay, so trees. I think there's, what is this color? It's not undersea green. Oh, it is undersea green. Undersea green and chromium oxide. Okay, so yeah, undersea green a lot of times is good for redwood trees, and it's not too, it's not too saturated like hooker's green. Sometimes there's even a little bit of like the really brown one. So this is what is that one? Shoot, rich green gold. I need to do my color mixing again so that I memorize these. Rich green gold, see how warm that is? That makes a good redwood tree color sometimes too, and you can start with that one or put that one near the top and then fade into the darker one. That's what I'm gonna do right there. Okay, so I'm gonna start up here, rich green gold, straight into the tops of these. I'm gonna be wet, make it kind of wet. Even though the most important thing, I have to remind myself, the most important thing right now is the value, and keeping it consistent value. If I start getting distracted by like doing cool things with the colors, I'm gonna forget that the value is actually more important. The value relationships are more important than any cool wet on wet pattern. So if you are trying to get a cool wet on wet pattern and are so intent on that you don't pay attention to the value relationships, then you're gonna ruin the drawing. I mean, not ruin it, but you're gonna make the wrong choice. It's not a good priority unless you have some specific reason why you're messing with that. That's the priority. The priority is to get those value relationships correctly, and that's not something that like some random art school decided. That's about how your eyes actually work, because your eyes prioritize value relationships more than like cool little patterns and cool patterns from wet on wet, or even color. Even more important than color. Color is important, but the biology of how your eyes work tell us as artists what the priorities are. And I'm having trouble getting this to what I wanted to do. I probably should have put the rich green gold down the entire background and then came in with this, but that's fine, whatever. Okay, now I have to look to see, because this is also going to be the background color for this paler vegetation in front. See, that's a little bit more texture in that wash than I would like. This paper is also not the greatest for doing washes. It's like totally flat paper. It's not the one I usually get. So I'm gonna put in some of these because there are a bunch of these holes here actually. And I should probably be looking at this more, but right now I'm kind of just trying to simplify. Okay, that's probably fine. Okay. think the value relationship's not quite right. Like that needs to be darker. And you can see I messed up my priorities with up here trying to do this wet on wet with this color overlap thing, created this darker value here than what it is down here. And the most important thing was just to get that into one solid color. I'm probably gonna have to wait now and come back and do like a darker wash on that whole thing, like maybe with perylene green or something. But first I'm gonna come down here into the water and make the water darker. Water darker. Okay, I could use the exact same color, and I probably will. Maybe I'll put a little more gray into it or something. I could put blue into it, which would be kind of fictionalizing the color. I probably should have faked it and put some blue in there, or try to create something that looks like ripple marks or something like that. Some like kind of like symbolic trick, you know, that we use to indicate water, even if it's not actually there. Oh man, I'm sucking on this water right now. Okay. Mirror water is not easy. Okay. I mean, it's something I haven't practiced very much either. Wishing I had my paper towel out here. Oh, that's probably a bad idea. Okay. Now, I could do some value differences in this foreground, but what I need to do is make this way darker, so I definitely didn't do a fast and accurate job with my value relationships. Sometimes you don't want to believe what you actually see sometimes. You don't want to like actually draw it the way that you see it. And that's what's happening for me right now with these value relationships. Like, part of my brain is saying, no, the water can't be that dark. Doesn't make sense. And my eyes are saying, the water is really freaking dark right now. So which part of my brain should I listen to? Okay. Now I just need to put in one layer here. I think this is something I should do like 10 thumbnails of. If I had done 10 thumbnails instead of this one longer one, I probably would have learned more different things. Maybe there's some watercolor lessons I wouldn't have learned, but in general, I would have learned more about composition, would have learned more about cropping, it's composition, and about value relationships. I bet I would have learned more how to simplify the value relationships of this particular kind of looking place. But I'd call that good. I'd call that a fine watercolor. If I keep tinkering with it that much more, I don't think those grays are actually totally necessary. Actually, maybe those grays are necessary. I should wait for this to dry. Famous last words, huh? No, I'm gonna do it now. Okay. Live on the wild side. All right, so I'm just gonna take one of my favorites, Shadow Violet. Maybe I'll put a little Bloodstone Genuine in. There's probably Bloodstone Genuine in this mixing tray already. Get a little of that. Try to get it almost as dark as the water. I need to add something else to make it that dark, because these are dark values, but they're not like, if they're diluted with water, they're not actually that dark. I just did a landscape, and now I'm ready to move and check out some more stuff and get into the sun because I'm getting a little bit cold. Now would be a good time to eat a snack. And one important thing is I am going to do some paddling right now, but I am not going to close up my bag all the way. I am gonna put my journal away and all of my supplies away, but I'm not gonna completely close up the waterproof seal on this bag right now, because if I do and I put it back up in that storage area up there in the front, it's gonna be like 3 more steps and I don't know, 20 seconds to a minute of time to get to those things. And I actually see a really cool great blue heron hunting up here. So like, I wanna be able to access my nature journaling stuff quickly, but I want to be just a little bit protected from the water, because when I kept my journal on my lap and I was paddling back there, it splashed the journal. I think this packed away should be fine. All right, so this heron, I want to draw this heron, but I don't want to scare it away. So I'm just gonna move really slowly and pretend like I'm doing something else, like not put my attention on the bird. I'm also drifting, so if I drift too much, I won't be able to see the heron. So I'm gonna do like a quick drawing, try to do a quick drawing of it. I might have to paddle every once in a while to keep my position. Oh shoot, the wind's really blowing me right here. So right now, if I'm having trouble finding my drawing stuff, that's a really bad time to have trouble finding just the tool you need, like really quickly. All right, so I'm drifting. I can paddle a little bit. Drifting a lot. But I don't want to paddle straight towards it either. Maybe I can get over here. Okay. So remember, every movement you make in a kayak keeps happening for a long amount of time, so you have to think about your vector a little bit. Okay, here we go. All right, I'm lining up a little bit here. Okay, here we go. The wind's hitting me, but here, I'm gonna do a quick sketch. Got this right now. All right. So my first drawing is pretty cartoonish, but remember, one thing I can do here is just keep using the hyena technique and do as many drawings as I can and actually learn about that part that's challenging, even diagramming it, like what is that angle that the beak is coming down at? Like what is that, that angle? And try to just keep drawing different sizes, maybe trying like a different style. So I'm actually rotating right now and getting further away from it. But like, what would that look like if it were just one line? Could draw some kind of like lines, imaginary lines going through it. So you can see I definitely didn't get anything that looked just like my subject, but I did get better at learning about what that thing is and what that angle is. And in nature journaling, that's actually more important. So part of me could be like, oh no, now I ruined the aesthetic of like my landscapito up here. But this is what nature journaling is about. And I find, especially if you use this cumulative effect, it looks fine, it looks finished. So another thing I could do is leave this for homework and get like a better great blue heron from a photo. I could try to just take photos. I could also write notes about the behavior I'm seeing. That would be probably the best idea. So I'm gonna try to get closer to it again and write some notes about what I'm seeing. So I'm playing on the dangerous side right here and doing a little bit of paddling with my journal in my lap. You know, you always drip on yourself when you're kayaking, but okay. I'm not scared of the bird. Setting myself up with a vector here and leaving this. Whoa, a little bit too fast on myself. Okay, all right, here we go. Now I'm gonna use my gray pen and write some notes. right, so I'm drifting a lot, but that's fine. I'm writing questions and observations right now, and I'm using my gray pen, which I love for text because it automatically creates this hierarchy between the images, and there's just something about this value as opposed to your black value that I think is really great for text from a composition perspective. And you can see the text is important information. I'm gonna probably put like metadata up here, you know? So I'm going in a backwards order. I probably should have done metadata first. You know, always do your metadata first, okay? You know, write your name at the top of your paper. It's just like in elementary school. But anyway, so it's also creating a nice aesthetic element here too. So combine the text with some sketching and a landscapeito. That's classic nature journaling right there. Right now I got my metadata down. I got some writing down on my paper here, some descriptions, and the sun's going down a little bit. It's not that late, but it's winter. So now I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit cold. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put myself in a warmer spot, do one more landscape, eat a snack, or give myself a little bit of energy, get in a warm spot, then do that other landscape. And those are some ways that you can nature journal from a kayak. And the landscape I'm about to paint right now is gonna be a crazy full page one just for fun. And I'm gonna actually post the video of that on my Patreon page for patrons only. So you can check that page out if you want to help support me in the work that I'm doing to help people see more in nature. And you can see some tidbits of things before anyone else. So check that out in the description below. That's at my Patreon page. And if you can't wait all the way until next week for the next episode of the show, check out one of these two videos here.